Alright, I just picked up the LUMIX S9, which I'm talking to you on right now. I'm going to take it out for a photo walk and a first impressions, see how I like the camera, see what works for me, see what doesn't, and just give my general overall first impressions. So let's head outside and go. Alright, first off, I do want to apologize if it's loud and the audio isn't great. It is pretty windy out here today. Can't really do anything to control that. So let's talk about build quality real quickly first. Honestly, I was expecting the worst. I heard a lot of meh things about the build quality, and this doesn't seem to be the case. Is it the best build quality I've experienced? No, but it feels solid. It doesn't feel too plasticky, and the plasticky bit does feel like solid plastic. It's not something I'm worried about. The dials don't feel as bad as I expected, although the rear dial is a bit small feeling, and I wish it was a little bigger. I also really wish that it had a joystick just to move my focus points around. Joysticks are one of the things I really love in cameras, and I hate when they don't have them, but you gotta make sacrifices, especially when you're in a camera this small. I do want to preface that I'm not expecting to get the most amazing photos on this photo walk. I'm really just out here to get a feel for the camera and really some of first initial impressions. I'm not expecting to get the best bangers and the best shots I've ever gotten. It's really getting a feel for the camera so I can let you guys know what my first impressions are. Really like the colors on this scene. All right, let's talk a little bit about why I got the S9. This is very much for me a want, not a need. I don't need this camera. I have a lot of cameras that can fill the needs that this camera does have, like the X100V or my Sony a7 IV, or even the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. But I really just wanted to experience what LUMIX is like now. You know, my first cameras were LUMIX. I started on the G85, I moved to the GH5 and the G9 before moving to Sony. And one of the big motivators for me moving away from LUMIX was to get better autofocus. And now that LUMIX has caught up, I thought this was a great way to reintroduce myself to LUMIX and see how far they've come. All right, let's talk about lenses. I only have the 18-40 kit lens. This lens feels really solid. One thing I've always given LUMIX credit for is their kit lenses, and this kit lens is no different. Obviously, I wish it was a lower f-stop, but it feels really good and it fits this camera really well. The size is nice. When it's fully compact and you're not using it, it's really small, and then it gets up a little bigger, but it's not huge, and it fits the body. Even without a grip, which I don't have yet, I don't feel like I need one. I do like using the Peak Design cuff just for some added protection, but I don't feel like I need a grip with this lens. I do really have my eyes on the Sigma 35mm f2. I think it would really fit this camera nicely, and I love a good 35mm lens. So, you know, this is my first time really going out with this camera, and the first thing I've noticed is I really do wish it had one more dial. You know, having the rear wheel is great and having the wheel up here is good, but it does really feel like it just needs one more to give you full manual control. So I think I'll be using this camera mostly in shutter priority. I like to have a lot of control over my shutter speed. I like to know when I have motion blur and stop it when I don't want it. So having it in shutter priority, it can jump my shutter speed. I've got my dial up here set to exposure compensation, and I can adjust my images as I see accordingly. Is this the ideal way to use a camera in my opinion? For some people, sure, but I really like having full manual control and all that control out of my fingertips, and this camera doesn't quite give you that, but that's okay. Every camera's got compromises, and I really don't mind using shutter priority. It's actually something that's been growing on me over the years. Also, with this lens, as you'll see, I just want to take my photo. If it's all the way locked out in this compact mode, you can't use it. You have to turn it all the way to 18, and then you can shoot with it. It is a little weird. It takes some time to get used to. I'm still not used to it. Sometimes I'll also try to zoom out wider and put it back in this compact mode when I just meant to go to 18. It just takes time to get used to. I'm sure I'll get used to it in time. It's going to be interesting because the higher f-stop of this lens, my ISO is being bumped more than I usually would. I could probably lower the shutter speed, but I really just like to set it and forget it, and that's kind of what I've done. So ISO is compensating. That being said, it's bright out. I'm not super worried about noise, but it'll be interesting to just get a feel for it. You know, as I'm using this more, it is a really sunny day, and I'd have to figure out how to set my screen brightness a bit higher. The screen feels really good in high resolution. I just don't think I have it bright enough for a bright day like this. Yeah, we can get this depth of field. Shooting at 40 and pretty close to the object. And as you can see, we're at f4.5, and it's just not very shallow at all. Which is fine because this is the kit lens and that's what we expect. I really want that Sigma 35mm f2. That just really seems like the perfect lens for this camera. You know, I don't usually shoot with lenses wider than 20mm, and this going to 18 has actually been really fun. I didn't expect to like shooting so wide as much as I am. Usually 20 is enough for me, but 18mm has felt really good on this lens. Got a RV over here that's looked like it's been sitting here for a very long time. When I'm doing photo walks like this, one thing I like to capture is the whole scene. So you got to get your mediums, your wides, and your tights, so you can really show off the whole scene and someone can get the whole feel. You know, if you're getting one photo, it's just a photo. When you shoot the whole scene together, it becomes a story, and I really like capturing that story. You know, as I'm using this lens, I'm getting a much better feel for it, and I'm actually really enjoying it. Normally, I don't like shooting at 18mm, it's too wide. The widest I usually go is 20, but the difference between 20 and 18 is subtle, but also not subtle, and it's really nice, and it just gives me a little more room to get wider and really show a whole scene. It also makes it perfect for someone who wants to vlog with this camera. 18mm is perfect. You don't get a ton of distortion, but you can get a lot in your shot if you're holding the camera out in front of you with your arm, and that makes it a perfect vlogging kit lens, which is exactly how someone who wants to use this will use this. But you can still get into 40mm, get tighter, and take a nice looking portrait if you need to. As I'm out here shooting, I'm getting a better feel for the weight of the camera, and it really isn't too bad, especially considering you have a full frame sensor. That being said, I am resting my pinky on the bottom like I do often. I do with my X100V and most smaller cameras, and my pinky is starting to get a little tired. I do think getting that small rig grip or one of those grips will help a ton. All right, we got these big yellow buses with Hebrew on them. I think this is a pretty interesting scene. Let's see if we can capture it. And like I said, I'm going for the wides, mediums, and tights so I can show the whole scene. You know, once you get in the habit of using the touchscreen to move your focus points, it really isn't too bad. You just really have to get into that habit because it's not something I'm used to, because usually I like to use the joysticks. See in the bus. I do have a CPL mist filter combo coming from K&F to use on this. I also have some NDs. They just haven't gotten in yet. I just got the camera the other day. This feels like it fits in the scene too. If I can get the corner right, you can see the tires on the both sides and the graffiti. That'll look really nice. We got a cool view of the World Trade Center over here. I'm gonna try to get it. The lens I'm shooting with is a little too wide for how far away it is, but we can try. This is really a unique area of Brooklyn. It just, it's always interesting. You always find something new and the scenes always look cool. Right, I haven't talked about it yet, but one of the other reasons I really wanted to get this camera is the real-time LUT feature. You know, I love Fujifilm recipes. I've got tons of videos about my favorites, but I wanted to experiment and see what other systems are doing to, you know, compete with Fujifilm recipes. And Lumix's answer is the real-time LUT feature. Now, it's a bit more complicated than I expected. I wasn't expecting it to be as hard to find a community of people using it for photography. So that's something I feel like that really needs to be built up before it becomes, you know, as household of a name as Fujifilm recipes and as many people using it as Fujifilm recipes, but I'm excited to experiment more with it and see how it comes. I've kind of discovered that I need to make my own Lightroom presets, which I don't use often, and convert them into LUTs to use for real-time LUTs, which I haven't done yet. And my goal on this photo walk, and one of the other goals, is to shoot a bunch of photos to create Lightroom presets around to then turn them into real-time LUTs so I can use them on the S9. All right here we got a NY double-decker tour bus. Not sure what it's doing all the way over here. Looks kind of out of commission. Once again, another cool scene. Let's get those wides, mediums, and tights. This really feels like the perfect day to test out a camera. With this 18mm, I really like how wide I can get. You can see all the construction going on over here. You can see the bus. You can see the old warehouse behind the bus or the garage. To really get the full scene with this 18mm. You know, when I'm shooting with a lens that has such a high f-stop, one of the tricks I do is I zoom in fully and step back, and that just helps create a little bit more compression, and therefore it separates the subject from the background ever so slightly. It's a good trick if you have to use a high f-stop lens, and it's actually when I learned using my G85 with the kick lens when I was trying to get a little more separation and didn't have the right lenses to do it. Also, I didn't mention it yet, but another great thing about this kit lens is the autofocus manual focus switch. A lot of cheaper lenses don't have that switch. It's a really nice feature to have, and I'm super happy to see it on the S9's kit lens. I haven't talked about it yet, but one of the most criticism this camera got when it came out was the lack of shutter in the camera. It makes it a lot harder for photographers to use. You're gonna get more rolling shutter, and it's just a big disadvantage. But I'm also evaluating that, and I don't think it's a make or break for a lot of people using this camera as an everyday shooter. Sure, if you're shooting sports, that's a problem, but as an everyday shooter, it's not. And actually, it's a benefit when you're shooting things like street, and you really want a silent shutter so you don't disturb people and interrupt people, and you don't draw attention to yourself. And the shutter sound on this is basically non-existent if you don't want it, because it doesn't have one, but it does have a really nice sounding fake shutter noise that it can make. Usually I don't like these fake shutter noises, but on this camera, it's not bad. Went to go wider there, and I went too wide and it shut the lens off. Just a little annoying with this lens. But anyway, this is one of those scenes where that 18mm is just perfect, and I wouldn't be able to capture this. Even a 20 would be a little too tight. As you can see, this is about 20 right now. One thing I'm noticing is my battery life. As you can see, I'm only down 1 bar. If I was using something like the X100V with a lot smaller batteries, I'd have a lot less battery life at this point. This battery life seems pretty good so far. Obviously, I need further testing, but I'm really happy with it. You know, it's the same battery that's in the S5 too, which also has to power an EVF and a fan, so that you should get some very reliable battery life on this camera. But I do find this camera likes to underexpose a bit. Obviously, we'll have to see when I get into the files and start editing, but I've been at it plus EV1 or even a little over that this whole time, just because I feel like the shadows seem super dark with this camera. And obviously it could be the screen. We'll see once we're editing the files, but just keep that in mind. All right, we've done a lot of shooting. I've got a lot of photos, got a lot to edit. You've seen all the photos. I'm curious, what do you think? What do you think of the S9? I know it's a very controversial camera, and I'm really excited to experiment more with it and expect more videos on it. This was just a first impressions, and overall I'm pretty happy with it, but it's gonna take more time. Expect a full review and a lot more content soon. For now, go out and shoot some photos. Thanks for watching.